Good afternoon. My name is Brandon,
And I'm Gabriel.
and we're from Atomic Consulting. Thank you for your time. Today, we're going to take you through three main issues that we feel Bombardier is facing, what solutions you guys can implement to solve these issues, and what the management implications will be upon implementing these solutions.
The first issue we're going to discuss today is relevant costing. There's been a huge rise in demand for business jets, and it's projected to increase by about $11.7 billion by 2030, especially the large jet category. This increase in demand has led to bottlenecks in the manufacturing process. Some of these constraints include insufficient labor, inefficient manufacturing, and a long aircraft certification process. As you can see from their financial statements, there's around a $14.4 billion backlog in only 2019. Vulnerability of backlog presents another issue because it can result in lost sales. About 15 to 20% of the $14.4 billion backlog is vulnerable due to economic downturns or creditworthiness of customers, both of which can lead to cancellations or deferrals of payments. The solution to this issue is outsourcing. Bombardier should outsource their manufacturing to China, including these 7 specific items listed here. This will amount to about $2.16 million in savings per jet. If you look at the manufacturing process, Canada and Texas will produce the essential parts as well as worry about the engineering and product development. Bombardier will then buy these 7 items from China. All these parts will come together and be assembled in Canada, and finally, we'll have the jet created. Some of the benefits of outsourcing these minor plane parts involve lower manufacturing costs, an increased efficiency of the whole manufacturing process, which will result in more jets produced at a faster pace to meet the rising demand and reduce backlog. The projected yearly increase in revenue from Bombardier could be $416 million by next year if they outsource in China. Some of the management implications of this issue involve, by reducing the backlog, you can limit vulnerability to their revenues due to unforeseen economic impacts. The quicker that Bombardier can deliver the product, the more revenue that they'll be able to realize. Analyzing their operating income, they can increase their operating income around $794 million by outsourcing, by only producing an average number of 11 more planes.
In terms of the second key issue that we feel Bombardier is facing, it's regarding their balanced scorecard. As you can see on the screen, their current balanced scorecard focuses mostly on profitability, liquidity, and capital structure, and all of these are financial metrics. And now, considering it's 2020 and they've been having a recent run of net losses, we feel that they would benefit more from expanding their metrics to include also non-financial metrics along with financial metrics in their scorecard. So in terms of a solution, we believe that would be beneficial if Bombardier would completely scrap their old balanced scorecard and instead take the financial metric portions of it and incorporate it in a new balanced scorecard. So it would be divided into 4 categories: the financial strategy, customer strategy, internal strategy, and learning strategy. So as you can see from the simplified strategy map, it starts at the bottom and flows all the way to the top, with the main goal being to increase Bombardier's profitability, but of course they have to achieve many different targets along the way to get there. And each category has its own performance measurements, targets, and initiatives. And truly it is these initiatives that are the drivers of this new balanced scorecard, and they're the most important part. From a financial perspective, Bombardier must manage their supply chain more effectively and implement a task management software to improve communication amongst employees, while simultaneously making it easier for Bombardier employees to collaborate with suppliers. This will help reduce the number of backlog orders, increase the return on investment, and increase share value. An example of a software they can use is the ACS supply chain management software. From a customer perspective, Bombardier should implement customer feedback surveys or interviews, which will give the company crucial insight about customers' evolving needs and how Bombardier must adapt its strategies to meet these needs and fully satisfy customers. By integrating a customer relationship management software, such as Qualtrics, across all jet lines to collect data, they can accommodate customers whenever necessary. This will subsequently improve their on-time delivery rating, customer ratings, and increase their customer base, along with increasing the number of orders they receive. From an internal business process standpoint, Bombardier should gather its top engineers and operations managers to create a manufacturing optimization program. As well, their operation managers should optimize the delivery routes while utilizing various methods of transportation to deliver their business jets. This will help to reduce the average production time per business jet while also reducing their delivery time. Both these reductions are key in order to satisfy customers. From a learning and growth perspective, Bombardier should retrain all their manufacturing employees by holding 3-day training programs. While this may seem like an extreme measure, the manufacturing process will be undergoing drastic changes to improve efficiency, and therefore this training is necessary to ensure beneficial long-term effects. While it would be impossible to stop production for 3 days to retrain all their employees, Bombardier's goal should be to retrain 75% of employees by the end of 2020 and all employees by the end of 2021. And to further incentivize employees to buy into this new training program, all employees will be given employee stock options to motivate them, as the employees will directly benefit if Bombardier meets its financial targets and subsequently experiences an increase in their stock prices. By achieving their 2020 targets, Bombardier's operating income is expected to increase by $451 million, considering only the quantitative effects that can reasonably be estimated at this point in time. The company will benefit even more by meeting all its targets for 2020. The increase in customer satisfaction rate goes hand in hand with the targeted 5% increase in customer orders, which is projected to lead to a $340 million increase in revenue. Bombardier is also projected to save over $16 million in direct labor costs by decreasing the average production time of their business jets by 5% in 2020. And this will be possible with the optimized production process along with the outsourcing to China mentioned previously. Moreover, the employee stock option plan will motivate employees to buy into the new manufacturing process, which has the potential to increase revenues even more. Retraining factory employees will also lead to increased production, subsequently causing revenues and operating income to increase. As such, it is plausible that the true quantitative benefits from reaching these balanced scorecard targets will exceed the conservative estimate of $451 million increase in operating income.
The final issue we're going to discuss today is the CVP analysis of Bombardier. Currently, their contribution margin is only at $28 million for the Learjet series, which is significantly lower than both the Challenger and the Global series at $177 million and $603 million. They've also only made 12 sales of the Learjet in 2019, meaning that there's not as much demand for these smaller jets. This is also proven in the small graph here on the right. If you can see all the light jets, their demand is relatively constant. However, if you look at the larger range jets, their demand is rapidly increasing and is forecasted to increase until 2025. In the decision-making process, Bombardier should also not consider their fixed costs, as when we're deciding whether or not to drop the Learjet or to keep it on, the fixed costs will be incurred regardless of the decision that we make.
So to reiterate what Gabe said before, Bombardier should ultimately decide to drop the Learjet series, but when making this decision, they should not take into account fixed costs because they have already committed to these costs long-term, and so they are not relevant for making this decision. So if you take a look at the bottom right of the slide, it shows the contribution margin per unit for both the Challenger series and the Global series. So even though Bombardier will lose the 12 or more Learjet sales if they were to drop this product line, because of the growing demand for larger jets, it's expected that they would sell 4 more Challenger jets and 8 more Global jets, and they would realize more operating income if they were to reallocate their resources from the Learjet to the Challenger and Global series. In terms of the management implications, it's broken down in the slides in 3 parts. So the first part shows the effect on the Challenger series next year. So it's projected that the contribution margin will increase by over $9 million total, with 4 additional jets being sold. Then if we look at the Global series, the overall increase in contribution margin will be almost $90 million, with them expected to sell 8 more Global jets. And then when you total that impact together and take into consideration the loss in contribution margin because of them dropping the Learjet, they're still expected to have an increase of $71 million in contribution margin, which is of course very beneficial for Bombardier. On top of the quantitative implications we mentioned about CVP, there's also additional implications that Bombardier must take into consideration, one of them being the potential loss of customers. As Gabe alluded to before with the graph, it showed that the demand for larger series jets is on the rise, while the demand for smaller jets is going to be relatively stable over the next 5 to 10 years. So while this doesn't pose a big risk, of course, there are customers who are only interested in smaller jets, and so Bombardier may lose these customers. However, if they were to ramp up their production of the Global and Challenger Series jets, they would ultimately realize more operating income because these jets have higher contribution margins and all their resources would be allocated to only producing the Challenger and Global Jet Series. And a relevant cost that they must take into account is the advertising expense for the Learjet, as if they were to drop this Learjet series, they no longer have to incur these advertising costs, which will obviously benefit their bottom line.
Okay, put me on the spot.
Now, Brandon, $70 million may seem a lot for me and you, but is it really a lot of money for Bombardier?
Well, Gabe, it's interesting you asked that. That $70 million is not an increase in revenue, but an increase in contribution margin just for 2020, what we're projecting. So, of course, over the next decade, as the demand for larger jets increases more and more, and the demand for smaller jets is stable, Bombardier will realize even more of an increase in contribution margin in the hundreds of $million within the next decade if they were to drop the Learjet series.
Wow. Okay, very good. So, Brandon, when you talk about the balanced scorecard, how are you going to put number values to characteristics of their employees and how happy their employees are?
That's honestly a great question, Gabe. Well, in our analysis before, we mentioned how we expect operating income to increase by $451 million. That's just a quantitative impact on Bombardier's financial statements that would be realized through achieving those financial targets. Of course, there's no way we can accurately measure how employee morale and improving customer relations will benefit their bottom line, but it certainly will impact in a positive way. And we'll be able to tell probably within the next few years how much Bombardier actually benefited from achieving these targets and implementing these new changes.
Okay, thank you. Really enjoyed the presentation.
You're welcome.
Thank you for your time, and hopefully Bombardier takes our advice into consideration. Have a great night.